Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Wouter Devinck. I'm a Microsoft student partner from Ghent University. I'm going to talk a bit about RIA development today. I'm going to show you some frameworks that I have used in the past and that I really liked, and I hope you will like those too. So first of all, RIA is a rich internet application. Think about Facebook, so an application on the internet that does a lot of things interactively, being more than just a static page on the web. In the past, you could have used a plugin to build a service like that, so for example, Flash or Silverlight, but that isn't always a good idea. There are a lot of different browsers, a lot of different platforms, Mac, Linux, Windows, with all those browsers on all those platforms, and not all are supported by all plugins. And also, if we look at the market today, the mobile revolution becomes more and more important, and almost none of the plugins work on the most important mobile platforms. So plugins really aren't an option anymore. So what should we do instead? There's HTML5, there's JS, JavaScript, there's CSS. Those are standards which are supported by all those platforms, also by the mobile platforms. So use those instead. The problem, however, is that they are hard to work. JavaScript is not as powerful as C# in Silverlight, for example. It is not as powerful as ActionScript in Flash. Also, there's still a lot of different browsers, and they have slightly different implementations of the standards. So there's still a lot of work to do to implement all those browsers. But luckily, there's a community out there, and a lot of frameworks have been created, so we can use those and develop applications faster for more platforms and have better applications in general. First platform I want to show, or first framework I want to show, is jQuery. Who has ever heard of jQuery? Could you raise your hand? Most of the room, or actually quite a lot of you have heard of jQuery. Has any one of you ever used it in a real project? Again, quite a lot of you have used jQuery, so that's a good thing. jQuery is really popular. It supports a lot of browsers, and it helps you to do things faster and easier with a lot less code. So this is an example of a jQuery line where you have the $ at the left. That's just an acronym, well, not really an acronym, but an abbreviation for jQuery. You can just write jQuery instead as well. $ is a lot shorter. And then we have that selector, p.need on the sample. That's a selector like in CSS. So we select all paragraphs, the p element, the p tag in HTML, and we filter on the class need. So the dot means class. So we have all those elements that are a paragraph with the class need applied to it, and then we do the rest of the command on that. So we add a class OMI, and we show them slowly. So jQuery also supports animations. This will be the default animation, but slowly. You can also specify which application you would like to use. In the selector, we had that dot for a class. There's also the hash sign for an ID, just like CSS, and all of the other things you can use in CSS. This is an overview of what jQuery supports. So there's the selectors, there's events as well. So for example, if something was clicked, you can ask jQuery to notify you of that and execute some code when that happens. There's also support for AJAX. If you look at AJAX, well, it's pulling a page from the web from a page without refreshing it. That can be hard work to do because IE will implement that differently than Chrome or Firefox, and jQuery offers you a common API that you can use in all those browsers. So for example, just $.ajax, or even simpler, $.get, and just a URL, and you get the page back. Then in jQuery family, there's also jQuery UI. You know, in HTML, you've got buttons, text boxes, but for example, no date picker. jQuery UI provides that. There's a lot more in jQuery UI. There's the interactions, so if you want to make a drag and drop interface, that's really easy to do with jQuery UI. There's the widgets, so for example, it's button, dialog, a progress bar, and so on. There's some utilities. I'll give a demo of the position utility in a second, and there's also some extra effects that you can use with those animations. just some samples of a date picker and an accordion, but you can use it as a tab control as well. And this is a sample of the position utility. So suppose you've got a website with all sorts of content on it. You want to have a login button, a sign-in button in the top right corner, and you want to have a dialog that is attached to that, so it appears when you click that button. No, that can be quite hard to do, because you would use absolute positioning in CSS for that, so you would need to know the position from the left and the position from the top. If your page is centered, that differs depending on the size of the browser window. So you would have to calculate that, and then there would be some slight differences between those browsers, and it wouldn't look very good in all of them. With jQuery, that's really simple. You just use the position utility. So you say position it of the parent at my right top, align that to the right bottom of that button with an offset of 5 pixels. There's a lot more you can do with this, but this is a very common use of it. Also in jQuery family, there's jQuery Mobile, which is actually jQuery UI, but for mobile devices. It works on tablets, it works on mobile phones, the iPhone, Android, and so on. And it looks like, well, those are the platforms, and it looks like this. So this is, for example, on a tablet. On a mobile phone, those two columns would be underneath each other, so it adapts to the size of the screen. You've got lists in that, you've got some form elements like buttons, text boxes, and so on. So if you want to build a mobile website, definitely have a look at jQuery Mobile. If you look at the interface of Twitter, they have a lot of UI candy, like beautiful buttons, pop-outs, the bar on top, as you can see on the slide. And they have made this CSS file that you can just download from GitHub and use in your websites. It's called Bootstrap from Twitter. Yeah, so well, I can actually show what that looks like. So they have scaffolding, for example, so a grid system that you can use. They have some elements like form elements, nice buttons, backgrounds. Well, if you want to build a website, you can just have a look at that, see if there's anything you can use, and save some time. Then there's NoCode. NoCode is a very interesting platform. It's a JavaScript library. It implements the model view model pattern in JavaScript. So if you look, for example, at Silverlight, you can have a model and then a view in XAML, and data bind that view to that model. So if something changes in the model, the view will update automatically. You can do that with NoCode as well. They even support dependency tracking. So if you have something, a calculated value that relies on some other values, it will know that and update those as well. But I can better just show a quick demo. On the NoCode website, there's a live example. So they have just 2 text boxes and then a span with some text. If I change the text in one of those text boxes and leave it, then that will be updated as well. What does the code look like? Well, the HTML is this, so simply 2 input fields and a span. And they are data bound, so they have the data bind attribute. Those are bind to first name and last name, and this one is bound to the full name. The JavaScript looks like this. So there's a view model, which has a first name and a last name, which are both observables, which are available in NoCode, KO. And then there's the full name, which is a computed value, so ko.computed, and it's just the concatenation of the first name and the last name. And then all you have to do is do ko.apply bindings on that view model, and that will work with those data bind attributes in the HTML. You can do a lot more with it, but that's the gist of it. There's also Signal R. It's pronounced like that, hence the photo. It is a framework written in C#, also open source on GitHub. that you can use to do the reverse of AJAX. So suppose you want to push something from the server to some function in JavaScript. Suppose, for example, a chat application. You send something to the server, then the server has to send it to the other person from the server to the client. That is not easy to do. There are several APIs that you can use, for example, WebSockets, but WebSockets aren't supported in all browsers. It's HTML5, it's quite cutting edge. There's also some techniques like polling. You can go to the server, do you have some information for me? Do you have some information? And do that all the time, all over again. Or you could use long polling when you just open a connection and keep it open until it's shut, and then you just open a new connection. So there's always an open connection where the server can send some data over. And actually, SignalR implements all of those techniques, and it knows which to use in which browser. So if we look at a code sample, this is a chat application. I counted it last night. I think it was about 9 real lines, if I don't count the brackets. So on the server, we just say we have a hub. A hub is a concept in SignalR. It's just, well, it has a method that you can call from the client, from JavaScript. So in this case, the send method, which takes a string, a message. And what it does is it adds that message to the clients. So to all clients that are connected to that hub. And then on the clients, we've got some JavaScript. So we use jQuery over here, because SignalR is built on top of jQuery. So you have to make sure you add a reference to both jQuery and SignalR to your HTML file. And then you can just do $.connection, the name of that hub, so chat. Notice that it's with a small c in this case, because, well, that's a naming convention in JavaScript. In C# you would use a capital letter, so it's just translated to a small letter for JavaScript. Then we actually implement that addMessage method. So we could see there was clients.addMessage. That's clients as dynamic, so that you can dot anything on that. But you have to make sure that whatever you write over there is implemented in JavaScript. So we just say chat.addMessage is a function. What that function does is just appending the message to a list of messages. And then underneath that, there's what should happen when you click the send button. So there's a text box and a button. When you click the send button, that text gets sent to the server using that send method that was implemented in the hub on the server. And then we just say connection.hub.start. And that's all we have to do. I have this running in few browsers. This is Chrome, and this is IE. I'll just put them next to each other and perhaps refresh them to make sure they are running. And then I can just say hi, and that appears in both browsers. That would appear over the internet in any client that is connected to that web page. You can do the other way around as well. Hello. So that's really easy to build a chat application, but you can also imagine other things to do with it. For example, sending things from the server to the client. And this is an application that I have built. It's a website, noplaying.be. You can just hit it on your phone if you want to. What it does is it has a service running that pulls the VRT, so the Flemish radio and television stations. It pulls their APIs and just asks, do you have a new song for me? In this case for Catnet Hits, but Studio Brussels and so on are there as well. Do you have a new song? Do you have a new song? And if there is a new song, then it pushes it to all those clients that are connected to that page using SignalR. This was really easy to write, so there is a real use for this. And the chat is implemented as well, in the same way as I have shown. I still have that jQuery demo from the start. So that was that little piece of jQuery code. If I just hit run code, then what happens is that paragraph with the class need is selected. The class OMI is added, which is the blue background, and then it is shown slowly. So you saw that animation appear slowly. Now, that was just a quick overview of a couple of frameworks that I have used in the past couple of months, actually. I have the URLs on this slide. You don't have to write them down. If you well, I just put this slide and all the slides on my blog as well. So if you would like a reference, you can just write down blog.wouterdevinck.be. Are there any questions about all of these? Because it's a pretty quick overview. No questions? All right, thank you.